need you to give me all the details on the Menendez brothers because last time we spoke, we weren't sure if Lyle and Erik would ever be resentenced. Now they've had a sentence of 50 to life, which means they're getting that parole hearing. But first and foremost, I need to know what was your initial reaction to hearing this news?
I don't think that I was that surprised, right? We've seen the public outcry for more compassion for them and to consider the totality of everything that they allegedly experienced at the hands of their parents and then the sympathy and support that they have from their family is unbelievable. I believe that justice, when we look at justice, we have to really listen to the victims and the survivors of a crime. I think their voices should be heard. And in this case, almost unanimously, the family has said, we want them to be released. They have served enough time. Now, I may not like the fact, and a lot of other people may not like the fact that these two young men, well, now they're in their 50s, were and are cold-blooded killers. Clearly, they had some kind of a moral, emotional, mental defect in order to be able to shoot their parents dead and then go on about their lives as if nothing had happened and they lied and they covered up, and there have to be consequences for that. So it's a tough one. I've spent many years advocating for the rights of survivors and for the victims. And in this case, it's the Menendez family. So, like I said, I may not like the outcome if they do get paroled, but I understand.
Do you feel like the show Monsters had any bearing on where we are today? Because a lot of fans said that that show gave this case a new voice, a case that was 30 something years old, and brought it back to the forefront. Now, a lot of us have known this case our whole lives, so it was always kind of in the back of our heads, especially living in LA. But do you think that show had any bearing on how hard people went on social media, how the family spoken out, how Lyle and Erik have now become these big media presence? Do you think it's impacted that?
I do believe that the show had an impact. I also believe the documentary did. I also believe that Kim Kardashian writing her essay about why she believed that we should judge them based on how we all now view the kind of sexual abuse they say that they experienced. So I think there's been a groundswell of support to have their case re-examined based on how we now understand victims of crime, meaning that they were victims here. But as I've said before to you, if every child who was abused killed their parents, we'd have a lot of dead parents, right? And what I ask myself over and over again, this was clearly premeditated. They had so many opportunities not to kill their parents, not to kill their parents, yet they went through with this plan, and then it was the cover up afterwards. Now, here's the other thing, Alexandra. I have also seen other convicted killers spend a fraction of the time behind bars that these two have. I mean, is that fair? I mean, there was a case in Texas I covered where this man killed an 11-year-old girl. He sexually abused her, he killed her, and he threw her in a trash bin. He served only 11 years for that murder. That's not right, and that's not fair. So where is the fairness in our justice system? Have they served enough time for their murders?
Right. So when people say the justice system is broken, these are the types of cases they're speaking about.
And let's keep in mind, they're still in prison. They haven't been released yet. What has happened is now they are eligible for parole. Well, in the state of California, the parole rate of inmates who go before the board and are actually released, 14%. That's the last statistic we have in California. A lot of people view California as being a very liberal state, but if you look at the parole rate of 14%, that's not a parole board that lets people out easily. So they're not out
I
yet.
was watching this show, an old show with Patricia Arquette, Medium, and she works in a DEA's office, and they were going to the parole hearing, and they were speaking about how the district attorney can also speak, and they really take into account what he thinks and what he wants. Now, we've had a switch in DA since this case has been turned over to Nathan, but he is still against it. He's saying that he doesn't feel like the brothers are rehabilitated and that he doesn't feel like they've taken accountability for their actions. Can you see where he's coming from with that?
I do. Nathan Hochman, the new district attorney, has tried to block everything. He does not believe that they are rehabilitated, and he didn't want them to be resentenced. In fact, it was so interesting. You rarely have the actual DA arguing a case in court, but this time he stood with the other prosecutor assigned to the case and argued the case before the judge. That's how strongly the DA feels about this. Is he happy with the decision, the resentencing? No. He has said that he will, or his prosecutors will be attending the parole board hearings. And I think he's going to make his case as to why he believes he described them in that hearing as being a moderate risk to society. And that's actually one of the biggest hurdles that the parole board has to figure out. Are you a risk to society? So I don't know the answer to that question. I've always said, my opinions are whatever they are. It's the system that will bear this out. And I think that one thing we've seen so clearly is no matter how much everyone has screamed and said, we need to see some change, we have. Change has been effected. Their sentence has been reduced. They are now eligible for parole, but they're still not free. They have a hurdle. And then even when the parole board rules on this, let's say they decide that they're eligible for parole, then it's like a 90-day review. And then the governor can either agree and sign off or deny. So it could still be months, right? It could still be Thanksgiving before they are released, if they are released. Also, this is the first time they are coming before the parole board. What I don't have the statistic on, which I think is fascinating, is of the first time applicants to the parole board, how many of those actually have to come back again and again and again and again?
And last time we spoke, we said we would love to see Erik and Lyle do some good if they got out, give back to the community. And I watched this documentary, Unleashing Hope with Rosie O'Donnell, and Lyle is part of a prisoners program where they train guide dogs to work with autistic children and vets with PTSD. So that's what he's been doing behind bars. And then Cooper Kosh, who played Erik in Monsters, said that Erik wants to dedicate his life to prison reform and working with those who have life without parole. Do you think what the brothers are doing behind bars is going to impact the parole hearing?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because you have a choice, right? These actions and these things that they've been doing for the betterment of others, right? These positive things that they've been doing behind prison. Think about it. They've had no possibility of parole. So what's the point? You could either act badly in prison or be a model citizen. It's like a moral decision that you have to make, meaning you do good because it may not get you out because you don't have a chance of getting out. It's not like they just started doing this. So I think that that's important. Rehabilitation is a huge part of the penal system, right? That's the whole point. Can you be rehabilitated? And if they can show that they have been good and they've tried to help others, I think that that's important. I mean, that shows a lot about them. But it's interesting, for each point that someone will say, and look at all the good they've done, the DA will come back and say something else. Like one of the things he said in the hearing about why he thinks that they're not model citizens is that they've each been caught with a contraband phone. And I'm like thinking to myself, okay, hold on a second. We're talking about a double homicide here, right? Two people being killed versus having a contraband phone. Like, look, if you think you're never getting out of prison, there's something called prison life. You just got to get by. So, I mean, do I find that to be an offense worthy of denying them parole? No, I don't think that's the biggest problem. So things like that, is it great? No, but I have seen prisoners use contraband phones to torment the victims that they have been convicted of harming. That's a different situation.
Right. That's horrible. I'm sure Lyle and Erik maybe wanted to say goodnight to the wives, but
Right,
what
there
you're
you go.
talking about is terrible.
The one thing that has always bothered me about them, about Erik and Lyle, is how many more Erik and Lyles are there behind bars with similar circumstances? And they're not getting the support and attention and maybe the compassion that they are getting. And that goes to fairness for me. And that's what I think about a lot. They're so high profile, it's all about them. What about the others?